Israel is colonizing Palestine for their oil, and how Israel are controlling the media to hide their oppression, as well as distorted video explanations.
Then the protests began. Palestinians began peacefully protesting at Sheikh Jarrah to defend the Palestinians and encourage the Israeli government to not move forward with the evictions. The Palestinians continued to peacefully protest.
One of the earliest examples of fake news during the most recent spurt of attacks was a YouTube video posted by Turkish state broadcaster TRT titled "Israeli Settlers Celebrate Fire at Al-Aqsa Mosque." This fire did not come from a mosque, rather a tree, and the Jewish people were engaging in annual celebrations for Jerusalem Day. Whilst the online news skews towards falsification, televised news has come under scrutiny for its crude simplification of the topic, with Daily Show host Trevor Noah comparing Israel to a bullying older brother.
I think of it like this. When I was a teenager, I would always get into fights with my little brothers. And little kids can be vicious, right? They're trying to punch you in the leg, they're trying to punch you in the nuts. They're kids, they do that. But my mom would say to me, whenever I get angry, she'd go, "Trevor, don't hit the kid back because they can't hurt you. You're a teenager and the kid is 4.
As the conflict continues to escalate, Israel now has 2 fights on their hands. A fight on the ground and a fight on the internet.
All right, we have Arab Israeli activist Mohammed Dawabi joining us now. I'm sure that you just heard that, some of the main trends that we are seeing on social media right now are infographics that seem to very easily explain how Israel is an apartheid state, a state full of white supremacists, that it's ethnically cleansing the country of Palestinians. Is that right?
Hi, Natasha. Good evening. I'm glad to be with you tonight. The very conversation about apartheid when it comes to Israel is in fact, in my eyes, very offensive to people who truly went through apartheid, because it just makes it takes the actual meaning out of that expression, apartheid. Apartheid is a system of racial segregation. It's a country that segregates between its citizens based on their race. There is no racial segregation in Israel. That's using the word and repeating it, in the sort of type of populism that is being spread against Israel isn't going to make it real. It's just degrading and offensive to people who went through it. There is a problem in this land. There is a national conflict between 2 nations, between the Palestinians and the Israelis. That's a fact, and that's a fact that we're dealing with. I'm speaking to you from Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv has been bombarded by hundreds of missiles in the last week or so, and millions of Israelis had to take shelter in the middle of the night, in the middle of the day. Same goes for Palestinians in Gaza. Now, the difference is that Gaza is a territory that's ruled by Hamas. Hamas is an internationally recognized terrorist organization. And when an internationally recognized terrorist organization fights an internationally recognized democratic state that has a lot of flaws, that is not perfect, but when this is the equation and this is a situation, I don't see why sane people wouldn't support the internationally recognized democratic state. Israel is not perfect, and civilians are dying in Gaza, obviously, but it's not Israel to blame. Israel is willing to take responsibility in building a better future, but Israel is not to blame for the deaths of citizens or civilians that are under the control of someone else, and that is Hamas. So
How?
It's really,
yeah. Go. You want to
really
finish?
appalling that people. It's really appalling that people, forget, this entire conversation or these things, and then focus on, how can we make Israel sound the most horrifying we could to the world. And the easiest thing to do is just call it apartheid. And I mean, it's literally just the rhetoric, the anti-Israel rhetoric, the extremist anti-Israel rhetoric, because, criticism of Israel is legitimate. I criticize the country wherever I go, whenever I go. Mm-hmm. But there's a difference between criticizing a country actively and on the basis of facts, and between that and simple populism, just because something
Mohammed,
is
I
trendy.
want to ask you, how has misinformation impacted your life as an Israeli, an Arab Israeli living through this ongoing conflict right now? And how do you think it's impacting others?
Well, Natasha, I think both of us can say for sure. I mean, we're both living in Israel. You can see how intense the tensions were here, and the fighting, and we had to, it's been. I can tell you for sure on a personal level that I've been anxious for weeks now. I've been sleep deprived for weeks. I think I'm not the only one. I've been mainly focusing on my activism on social media, on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, to show that reality on our side. Because I felt that there's so much misinformation and so much fake news, and so much biased coverage of the things, that I felt like us, the people who are living here, need to get our voices heard. And
so
that's what it will. Yes.
So final and quick answer on this. As an Arab Israeli living in Israel, what would you want to see the international community do to help you and your community's needs?
I would certainly say, or try to remind the world that the Middle East is not, Western Europe. We live in a very, region that is full of instability. And the way, the dynamics here work, and the way Israel needs to behave in this region is different, would have been different if Israel was in another region. And so I would ask the international community to stop putting us to higher standards, and stop the low expectation culture of the Palestinians, because we're in the Middle East, and in the Middle East the standards are different, and Israel needs to do anything it could, or everything it could, in order to protect itself.
All right, Mohammed, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your perspective, much needed. We are going to turn to London now, which has seen thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters take to the streets to demonstrate against Israel over the course of the last few days. Many claim that they're taking to the streets to call on the UK government to stop Israel's brutal violence and oppression of the Palestinian people. But horrifically anti-Semitic videos have also been surfacing from these protests as well. Take a look at this. Well, you just heard that since the recent escalation in violence between Israel and the Palestinian territories, there has been a five-fold increase in reports of anti-Semitic incidents in the United Kingdom, according to the Community Security Trust. And joining us now is our UK correspondent, Jonathan Sacherdoti, to break this down. So first of all, give us a sense of how big these protests actually are in the UK, who is showing up, and break down how protesters are connecting this, ongoing conflict in Israel and the Palestinian territories to Jews.
Well, Natasha, this happens every time there is unrest in Israel, particularly when there are military operations in Gaza. There tend to be these very big rallies, maybe thousands of people even, marching, usually in London, towards Kensington, where the Israeli embassy is, chanting and waving banners. Many of them peaceful protesters, it must be said, but often within those crowds there are those who are quite violent. And similarly, there are often all too many banners and signs which are just virulently anti-Semitic and have almost nothing to do with the actual issue that they're meant to be marching over. And this example is no exception. 9 people were arrested on suspicion of violent disorder in the London protests, and the Metropolitan Police said another 4 were arrested on suspicion of breaching the health protection regulations. Remember, we've got the COVID-19 restrictions still going on, and 9 police officers were injured. The Met said that it was just a few pockets of disorder among the more peaceful crowds, as I said. Then we saw those disturbing images as well of a protesting cars, a convoy of cars that made their way through London, particularly through areas with big Jewish populations, shouting through megaphones that they should F all Jews and rape Jewish women. So this is obviously something that had many in the Jewish community quite afraid during the festival of Shavuot, and plenty others in British society disgusted to see this going on.
Yeah, I mean, I can't explain to you how scary it is as a Jewish person to be seeing that from Israel. The diaspora, I mean, I just have to ask, how are British police preparing and reacting to this uptick in anti-Semitic incidents? I mean, we've already seen this happen in the past. During Tzuk Eitan, the 2014 Gaza war here in Israel, there was an 18% uptick in anti-Semitic incidents across the world. How is the UK going to deal with this?
Well, to a certain extent, same old is what you could say, and that doesn't really reassure many people. Boris Johnson spoke out against it. Keir Starmer, the leader of the opposition Labour Party, spoke out against it. Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, spoke out against it. But that's a lot of speaking out against it. There was indeed an emergency question in the House of Commons, 45 minutes of speeches and debate among politicians, all of them speaking out against anti-Semitism. However, nothing much changes. Britain is, generally speaking, a pretty safe place for Jews to live. But at times like this, many in the Jewish community say that it feels like the mask is off, and underneath the polite facade, there is a strain of anti-Semitism that bubbles up, rises to the top, and terrifies people. And it's at times like this that people in the UK, Jewish people in particular, look at society and wonder how many other people there are who have these sorts of views, who just simply keep them quiet most of the time. And those are the sorts of things that worry Jewish people around the world, because it's not really that long ago in living history that Jews did have to flee Europe and did have to find refuge elsewhere. Many of them came to the UK, but now, of course, there are those who say that instances like these fill them with fear and dread again.
All right. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us and giving us some insight as to what is happening on the ground in London. We don't have time to turn to our panel right now, but I think that we're all thinking about, the anti-Zionist trends among the Jewish community that are rising right now amidst this ongoing conflict. I would like to thank our guest, Rafael Yerushalmi, for being with us for this first hour. He's going to be leaving us now, but we will have another guest joining us. Don't go anywhere, because we're going to be back at the top of the hour with more news and analysis in our rolling coverage of the latest escalation in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We'll see you soon.
Today we're making arepas, one of the most famous Venezuelan dishes. It consists of a corn bread. The arepas for the Venezuelan is as for the shawarma for the Israelis, meaning that it's the everyday street food, with the only difference that every household in Venezuela knows how to prepare arepas. We grill it on the plancha, then we open it up and we stuff it with all different kinds of things. Arepas. This is me and my partner's restaurant. It's 100% Venezuelan food. I was born and raised in Venezuela until the age of 22. My partner was born here in Israel, but also grew up in Venezuela, and we both made Aliyah around the same age. First, we started with a very small place in the shuk, and after a few years of making sure that people were enjoying it, then we decided to open up a bigger place. Different types of arepas that range from the vegan to the meat lovers, flavors that are very fresh. And we also have, for the meat lovers, a very typical type of meat that is called carne mechada, which is basically a slow-cooked meat that then is shredded. We love being different. We love serving food to people that has never tried our food ever before. It's important for me to maintain those original flavors from Venezuela, because in a way it helps me feel a little bit more at home. Not that I'm not at home in Israel, but also makes me feel like I'm back in the